Composition within the world of photography is one of those things that has absolutely no shortage of opinions and tips and best practices. But like all things, some words of wisdom, they stick with you a bit more than others. And in this video, I'm going to share with you something that completely simplifies the way that I look at composition as it relates to, I guess, where to put things within my frame. Because at the end of the day, space is limited, so you've got to use it wisely. So this is a new photograph from the Dolomites right here on the left side of the frame. This is the completed image here. And then this image right here on the right file is on the right side of the screen is the raw file. Now I went back and forth on how best to explain this. And I think showing you different crops is a great way to, I guess, mimic the on-location compositional changes that I was thinking about when I captured this photograph. Now there is a technique called shooting for the crop, which if you're not familiar with what that is, or if it's not something that you practice when you're on location, I'll explain to you real quick what it is, but I would highly, highly recommend that you do it. So this right here, as I mentioned, a completed file, this is the raw file on the right side here. So let's come over here to the raw file. If I come over here to the crop tool, as you can see, this is the entire photograph right here. If what happens a lot of times is, I often shoot with, pretty wide angle lenses, especially when I like to do a vertical orientation or a portrait orientation, as this image right here is. But these these wide angle lenses are so wide. This is a 14 millimeter image, and it creates this overly tall photograph. So what I like to do is come over here to the crop tool and drop this down to 4x5. Just to kind of shrink that crop a little bit. And I'll oftentimes maybe unlock that the lock right there and just kind of bring up certain areas of the scene up there, maybe a little bit right here. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do is determine what areas of the scene add value. What areas of the scene are the most interesting? These are very important things to consider. And shooting for the crop is basically when you get on location, you compose your photograph, you build your composition. And then once you think you have it set, zoom out just a few millimeters to give yourself some additional breathing room around your frame, because you can always crop in to refine your composition in post, but you can't crop out. So a lot of times if you get your composition, I guess, too locked in when you're on location, and then you get it back on your computer and you want to make some compositional changes like this right here, if you're too zoomed in, you're not giving yourself any kind of leeway to crop in your frame. So shooting for the crop is something that has really helped me, and it's something that I would highly recommend that you experiment with as well. So for this image right here, the light was happening so quickly through here. I think I only got 1 or 2 handheld images captured, but I wasn't 100% certain what I wanted to do with the bottom of this rock here. Obviously, I like the sky. There's a lot of detail in the sky. There's a little bit of blue, a little bit of gray, very dynamic, very moody conditions happening here. So I knew I wanted to capture that. That added value to the scene. This area down here, I wasn't 100% certain, but I wanted to make sure I captured it in case I decided later that I do want that in there. But now I don't think I do, so I'm going to bring the crop up a little bit here to maybe something about like that, because this area down here, I don't believe is adding much value to the scene. So we could bring it up there a little bit. Whoops, not that far, maybe to about right here, and then bring this area here, because I think that this area adds more value than this area here. We kind of bring the right side over a little bit, because there's this area here is not really adding much to the overall scene. Maybe bring this area in just a touch. And something like this looks much more focused, much more dialed in, because I was ultimately getting rid of the areas that were not adding value and using that additional real estate to add the area that was adding value into the scene. I guess that's a good way to say it, because the sky up here is more interesting than the area of the rock down here. Let me close this down, go to another photograph right here. Whoops, let me hit escape and go back to the library. Let's go down here to the grid. This image right here from the Faroe Islands, this is the completed image here, and then this is the raw file. So this is the completed photograph, and this is the raw file. And I know I mentioned this to kick this video off, but in photography, space is very, very limited, and you've got to use it wisely. So if you think about it, this area here, this is what the entire scene is. That's not a whole lot of real estate right through there. So where you put things in your frame is absolutely critical. So I'm always asking myself on location, does this much sky add value to the scene? Is this area over here valuable? Should I add this into my scene, or should I not add this area into my scene? And that really helps me when composing a photograph. And this is a very good example of this, because I absolutely love this cloud right through here. If I come up here to the develop module, let's go down here to crop again. Let's put on that 4x5 and move this down a touch. But as you can see, this cloud deck right here, I really, really enjoyed that. But everything above it, this area here, how much value does this add to the scene right through here? Is there an area of the photograph that adds more value than that I should be adding into this photograph? And for me, the answer is yes, absolutely. So I wanted to bring this down because I want to reduce that area of kind of nothingness above that nice cloud deck, because I want to be able to capture this rock right through here. Let me unlock this real quick, and we can bring this down to where I can capture that little bit there, because I think that that anchors the foreground very, very well. So for me, this area through here, this rock, added more value to the scene than this area up here above the clouds. Let me close this down so you can see the final version right through here. Now, although the foreground is a little bit darker, you can still see that rock there, and I think that that adds a lot of value. In this area up here, that nothing area is no longer there. So I was basically swapping this for that area up there, or to not have that area up there, and I think that that was definitely the right decision in this particular scene. We've got another example of this right here. This is a great example of it here, but always asking yourself, does this certain area of your photograph add value to the scene? Is there an area of your photograph that is a little bit more interesting? Because the space that you have to frame your photograph in, regardless of what focal length you're using, the space is very limited, so use it accordingly. You only have so much real estate in your scene. This is another image from the recent trip to the Dolomites. Let me hit the crop tool here, and we can bring that 4x5 in if we want to. And if we bring it up a little bit, so what happens a lot of times, and I do this all the time with reflections, you know, it's a common question, where do you put the horizon in your scene? If it's a reflection, a lot of times I'll put that horizon dead center of the photograph, something like that, because reflection scenes, it's one of the big benefits of shooting reflections, is it creates a very harmonious, a very balanced, very simplified photograph. And by putting that horizon line in the dead center of your scene, that just adds to the simplicity or that harmonious aspect of a photograph. So a lot of times with beautiful reflection photos, I will do that. Let me go back here and just reset this. But for this particular image, there is a lot of other beauty that's happening here. So if I were to, let me bring that back down to 4x5, put that horizon in the dead center, something like that, you can see I miss out on all that right there. And I definitely don't want to do that. I love the foreground right through here, these leaves. So when I'm cropping this photograph, the big question is, do I want to add more sky or do I want to add more leaves? And this is kind of where that ultimate question comes in. What is adding the most value to your photograph? Are those leaves more interesting than the top of those clouds, or are the top of those clouds more interesting than those leaves? In my opinion, the leaves are the most important part. So what I would do in this scenario is probably put that horizon line right around that third grid right through there. That way, I'm still picking up a fair amount of these leaves through here. I really like these reeds sticking out of the water right through there, so I want to kind of pick those up. So I'm getting, you know, plenty of leaves, but I'm also getting the clouds here, because I think you'd agree, this area up here, like how much additional value is that adding to the photograph versus if I wanted to capture all of the sky, now I'm losing a little bit of those leaves. So I think that asking yourself that question, you know, where is the most interesting aspect of the scene? Because at the end of the day, when you frame up your photograph, you are going to have to make a decision because your space is limited. What is more interesting? Is it item A or item B or element A or element B, whatever the case may be? This is another great example of this here. This is from a recent trip to Colorado earlier this year. If I hit reset here, you can see that this image, there is a lot of information captured in this photograph here. Once again, a 14mm lens and a vertical orientation captured a massive area. But how much value is this right here adding in? When I first captured the photograph, I was like, oh, I like all of this natural framing right through here, but this feels just a little bit messy to me. I definitely want to capture, you know, I don't want to lose this tree. I definitely don't want to lose this cloud. I didn't give myself a lot of additional room in the sky here, so I don't think I want to make any changes with that. But I think that I do want to bring this up a touch to maybe something about right, maybe like this is starting to look a little bit better. I kind of like the way that the mountain exits the frame up here versus the way the mountain exits the frame here. They're kind of at this very, very similar positions. I'm still able to capture this cloud, able to capture this tree, but I'm eliminating a lot of this area down through here where all of this edge everywhere here, how much value is that really adding to the photograph? Personally, I don't think it was adding really any value to the scene. And this right here seems like a much more balanced, much more focused, and much more simplified composition, a little bit cleaner. Another example right here about horizon lines. So this is a great example of this, where a beautiful reflection photo and putting that horizon practically dead, actually it's almost exactly dead center of this frame. Another example of this, let me close this down. Another horizon photograph, putting that, or I should say reflection photograph, horizon right in the center of the scene, right through here once again. So whenever you do have a good reflection photograph, a lot of times putting that horizon right in the center of the scene is a great way to do that. But when you start getting these kind of photographs, where there's just absolutely, whoops, let me go back here again. No reflection in the photograph at all, but there's a lot going on, and you come into, your post-processing session and you're gonna start cropping it, trying to refine it a little bit more, bring this out. You have to make decisions as to what is more interesting, what's adding the most value to your scene. And by asking yourself these kind of questions, it's gonna help you to better crop your photographs, but most importantly, it's gonna help you when you're on location to determine exactly, what areas of a composition should you include in your photograph? What areas of a composition should you exclude? Because I think getting the composition selected, this scene was very simple. Beautiful grist mill, little waterfall right through here, mountains in the background, and trees. Easy composition, right? But you got so much other noise that surrounds compositions, and no matter what you're photographing, you'll have your composition, then you'll have a lot of other little external things that are near your composition. And that's when you're gonna have to start asking yourself, what's adding the most value to my scene? What is more interesting? And then asking yourself that question is going to help you determine what you might want to include and what you might want to exclude. But as I mentioned to kick off this video, shooting for the crop is an absolutely fantastic best practice to get into, because it's going to give you much more flexibility when you go to edit your photographs. Remember, you can always crop in, but you can't crop out. So shooting for the crop is absolutely imperative. So I do hope that that information is helpful. It's something that has really helped me when refining a composition when I'm on location, because I always used to struggle with, do I want to include this or do I want to include that? If I have to pick one or the other, which one will I include or which one will I exclude? Just asking yourself those quick questions. What's most interesting? What's adding the most value? Will definitely help you out. At least I hope it will, because it's helped me out substantially. So if you do have any questions, please leave those in the comment section below, and I will do my best to get back in touch with you as soon as humanly possible. And if you did enjoy this week's video, if you could, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And as always, I really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time to spend it with me here today, and I will see you all next Wednesday.